Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Welcome, Ailsa.
Thank you.
It's really great to have you. So today we are going to be chatting about external therapeutic environments, how we can use the environment to our advantage as we rehabilitate horses or advise clients on how they can support their horses through rehabilitation. This is a topic I'm really excited about. It's something that a lot of people are talking about on social media at the moment, mostly in the form of track systems. So we're going to be chatting about what we can set up easier, more easily, more complex, and how we can really use these to our advantage. So if you guys are joining us live, it's really great to have you. Please know that this is a discussion. It's an opportunity for us to connect with each other. So please ask questions, share your experiences, thoughts, plans in the comments. We really do want to hear from you. And there was something else specific I wanted to say now. It's really great to have you. If you're watching as a recording, comment, ask your questions as well. We will answer them as we come back onto social media and check in over the coming days. So to those that are joining us live, it's really great to have you. We are chatting about external therapeutic environments and how we can use them to the benefit of our patients. So Ailsa, welcome. It's so great to have you join us. Would you please introduce yourself to us and your interest in this topic?
Hi, my name's Ailsa Page, and I run a veterinary rehabilitation practice with both horses and dogs in northern Sweden. I have 6 dogs and 6 horses, and I only have one bottom. And so I became really interested in how I could get my horses fit and moving in anticipation for being able to ride them. My horses do different jobs. So I have my Arab mare, who is a long distance horse, and we go out, and it's pretty easy to keep an Arab in trim if you're riding her. But if you're, I learned a new word today. It's called the Skomaker's hund, and it means the shoemaker's hund. And it comes from a saying in Sweden, which is the shoemaker's kids have no shoes. So my dogs and my horses are kind of a bit like that, unfortunately. I'm so busy running around trying to sort other people's horses and their dogs and their competitions out that my guys get precious little until I've got a bit of free time. And then it's like, come on, guys, let's go. So it's not fair to them that I just leave them being fat and possibly a bit happy, but fat in their field, and don't prepare them at all. But it's also not realistic for me to work with 6 horses every evening and have some kind of family life. And I have a lovely man who makes me cups of tea when I'm not feeling very well and just tops up. And so he would like a bit of attention too. So I started looking a long time ago. I've been a barefoot person, I suppose. I've had a lot of horses that have been barefoot, not all, and I'm keen on it, but I don't wave flags about it. But in finding out how I could make my horses that then lived in Wales on a bog on the Welsh mountainside where it's incredibly wet and really not good for feet. And not that great for bodies either, because they tend to go and just stand still and shiver. So I needed, just for me, to look at how can I keep my own horses fit. And I looked into Paddock Paradise, which is something that from Jamie Jackson and the work of the Barefoot guys. And I was kind of quite impressed by it. And then I started to think about those horses that we have laminitis or equine metabolic disorder. And we know that they have to move more, but our owners have a job and a life and probably also another horse. And how do they work with them? And also then I started to think about how I could alter environments generally for specific conditions. And so it's sort of grown into a habit of looking at environments. And I think it comes from where I come from as a therapist, which is working with people, where I believe that therapy is the business of creating environments for individuals to heal themselves or to maintain themselves or to develop. And I think that's right for all kinds of therapies. If I take my laser, I'm trying to create a cellular environment that will be good for healing. If I change how many times a horse gets hit on a racetrack, I'm trying to change an entire environment, a social environment for that horse. If I'm working with a horse at home and I want my fat Welsh pony, who is actually a boy, to look less like he's a pregnant mare. I need to change the environment, and that's what I'm about to do this evening, to make it a little bit more challenging for him. And that's everything from creating a fairly narrow track that's not got much grass on at all. It will have a bit because that's where I live, and it's the middle of summer in Sweden, and we have 24 hours light. So there's going to be grass growing. It doesn't matter. Unless I were to tarmac the whole of my property, there's going to be something growing. So that's the one thing. Another thing would be to think about how I can then create movement for him that's good quality movement, because he tends to slop along, kind of drag his hind legs. He's not a dressage horse. He's a 12 hands. I don't know what that is in centimeters, but he's a really small Welsh mountain pony. He doesn't get rid of. We sometimes do tricks. He's a really good trick pony, but he doesn't get that kind of active movement other than when the whole herd, and he's in a herd of 6, move together. So I'm thinking that I create a narrow passageway, and then I create lowish cavaletti that he can go over. Along the way, I want to make it as interesting for his head as I can, because I think our horses need to be able to think as much as they need to be able to move their bodies. It's all part of health, and well-being is being able to use our brains. So my thinking is to put some decks, just got to think of the English word now, tires, down, and then hide, put some, he doesn't like pine cones very much, as in he's not going to eat them, so put some pine cones and in between there, a few bits of carrot. So he and his friends can go and put their noses in and find a bit like you would a snuffle mat for a dog. You can snuffle mat, of course, if you've got a horse that's in an indoors environment and you're having to think about, okay, he's got to be still, but how am I going to prevent vast loss of muscle, depression, over stressing other limbs? Again, you can be thinking about things like snuffle mats. I have a lovely owner who has her Chester, he's called, his beautiful horse, ex-dressage horse, very elderly. He is a retired gentleman. And around his stable is loads and loads of teddies hanging, because he's often on his own, and when he's on his own, he weaves. But if he has his teddies, he doesn't weave. And she puts a bit of peppermint on the teddies so they smell interesting. So he goes and nuts them with his nose and is interested in the teddies. So I think creating environments is more than the obvious. It's more than just making a track and then getting out to move. But let's look at that. How do you make a track and get them to move? Well, you need them to want to go somewhere. So we can have quite a narrow track, and then we're going to ask them to, sorry, I just realized it's back to front, and there we go. We can have quite a narrow track. And we're going to ask them to go as a group. And we're going to stick the water maybe at the top of the hill and a couple of feeding stations with slightly more space on the way back down. That would be a pretty basic. Really basic is just have a track around the outside of your field and your ponies live. They have water at one end. One end, can you have end of a circle? But you know what I mean. Water somewhere, and then they have food somewhere else. Very basic. But that, in my experience, they spend a lot of time standing eating and they don't spend much time walking. So I think we have to make it more interesting. And for me, ultimately, I have 9 hectares of grassland with forest down at the bottom that goes down to a river. And what I would like to do, when I can afford it, is to put fencing the whole way around, and then a narrow pathway with some bits where it kind of comes a bit out. So I've got things like I have a ditch that has lots of lovely stone in it. And stone is great because it allows them to, they're like river stones, it allows them to use their feet and have the same kind of angle that they would have going slowly and picking their way, but it would be the same angle that they might have if they were really going for it, if they were polo ponies or really running. We have an area that in the summer we certainly can have water. We've got a big river. So that would be another thing. There's a hugely steep bank. You need to understand your ponies. You need to think about safety, obviously. If you've got a wild herd that go crazy every time something happens, my guys are ridiculously calm. We've met bear here and they're like, oh, okay, it's bear. All right, well.
Oh my gosh.
So they're really not bothered about stuff. But for example, I know there are times when I would not have them on a track. So times when they begin the shooting season and they start to shoot beaver here would be really good and quite scary. And there's a lot of people coming through with dogs and guns and lots of noise. And so it would be a bad time. So we need to think about more than just our goals as physios. Another thing to do is think about what you want. So I have a dressage horse I work with where really her cranial is so tight and a bit crap, to be honest. And so I wanted her to do lots of stretching down. And Mummy does carrot stretches every day. Mummy is great. The owner is fantastic. But I was thinking, can I get that horse to actually stretch long and down, kind of curve the neck, not just stretch down to eat. They do that. How can I get them to stretch over and down? So I actually aim specifically to stretch the trapezius. So I worked on creating with railway sleepers a sort of wall in front of where her hay stands. And then we have a little push it back. So she's actually got to make that stretch. Now she has other places where she can eat. So she's not stretching like that all the time because that would be bad. But we have that option. We can be as creative as we want with this stuff. And that's what I love. I have a little pony at the moment who's on box rest because he's had laminitis, not mine. And he's pretty miserable about it, but he's also not moving. He's basically standing getting fatter and fatter and fatter. So what we've decided to do is we've created, you were talking, Anne, about your boxes with a little area outside that they can go, or maybe we've created him like another second little box outside using electric stencil fencing. There's the word, electric fencing. And then in that, we've then created some challenges for him. So again, things that he has to step up onto because he's now at the point where he could be using his feet a little bit more. So I've created a little like low stairway with some railway sleepers. He has to step over something to go back into the box to go and get his food, and his water outside in the far corner. So he's having at least to walk back into. His mum plans to extend his challenge by having a whole lot of cavaletti between him and the water. Not yet, but when he's ready. So it's just, be as adventurous and as we're good at thinking out of the box as therapists, aren't we? And it's so much fun doing this stuff.
It is so much fun. And I think that kind of manipulating the environment or adding factors into the environment is not something that we as equine therapists have really been spending time on and focusing on. So I'm really excited. So did you say earlier that therapy is the business of creating an environment where the individual can heal themselves? I love that. Did I get that right?
That's Ailsa's definition of what I do. Yeah, because always that means that I'm allowed to get involved in politics around horse racing, for example. I'm allowed to get involved in the micro climate within our dogs and horses and trying to change that and researching how best to affect that and everything in between. And I think that's, for me, I'm also allowed, I love teaching the next generation. So I'm also allowed to create therapists for the next generation that are not going, right, we've learned this, so this little box is what we do. And going out going, how do we solve this problem? That's what I think we should be doing as therapists, because that's what we do in the body. We don't quite know, there's a muscle here that's like, oh, it's a bit tight. And, oh, what is it? What's going on here? I don't see that when he walks. So we research and we research and we research with the horse until we get to the point where we can solve that problem. We are natural problem solvers. This is just an extension of that for me.
No, I love that. So guys, I just want to invite you again, if you're joining us live, please join the conversation, chat with us, share your experiences and thoughts. Have you been playing with creating external therapeutic environments, or just adding some things into specific patients' environments to achieve a specific goal? Let's chat about some like simple ways, because creating a track system is not something we're going to be able to, we're going to go to a client at a normal sort of livery yard and we're going to say, hey, it would be great if you guys set up a track system here. That's not realistic. It's not going to necessarily happen. We might have some clients who say, okay, well, if that's what my horse needs, I'll move to a yard where they have a track system. but it's also not something that's available everywhere in the world. It's definitely, track systems are kind of popular in certain areas, but it's definitely not a global thing yet. So for the horses who are stabled, the normal kind of stabled environment with a small paddock, what are some of the things that we can do to help them in that environment? For example, something that's come up that I think has value is varying feeding heights. So having, as simple as having a few different hay nets within the stable and having them at varying heights, and having each one with varying hole sizes in the net, so that some are harder to eat from than others, is one way that we can add values. The teddies is another thing that I've seen before in a client of mine, and I was just like, you're crazy, but if it makes a difference, it makes a difference.
With that horse, it's like been night and day. He went from looking like an old boy who was really, and I was like, is this fair that we're keeping going, to loads of teddies the next week that I came? And I was like, okay, this is quite strange, but what a happy boy. It was like, I've got friends now. It's okay. So yeah, absolutely. I think whereas we normally say think outside the box, we're thinking inside the box, literally. So how do we do a track system within the box? How do we create an environment that will help just this particular horse and this particular horse's movement? So if it's a fatty, okay, we can do different heights. We can also do obstacles they have to get over. Yeah, leave a bit of space if you can for them to sleep. But that you can also do at night by just removing the obstacles. So it depends on their living environment. I actually have I have one owner who does live her horse is on a livery yard that doesn't have a track system available, and what she's done is to put a track system around the little paddock that she's got, and the other pony's in the middle stuffing himself on grass, and her pony's going around the outside doing cavaletti and hopping and doing all the things that she wants him to be doing as much as possible. And because we have a lot of mosquitoes here at nighttime, it's like the nighttime trainer, they call it here. So the mosquitoes make the horses move. So actually her horse and the other pony are in the day, opposite to everybody else. And as she says, she feels a bit mean, but he's lost loads of weight. He's much fitter. He's much more able to move, and he's really going at some when he's moving with her daughter. So, and that was just get an agreement with somebody that you're sharing with, and get a little bit of electric fencing and around the middle.
I think that's such an important thing that you've said now, is to switch stabling in the day and being out at night, especially for overweight horses. That's something that I've done with our herd as well, is to keep them in a kind of starvation camp during the day, and they go out on pasture at night, because I really struggle to control weight in our herd. And that's been pretty effective as one form. I don't think it's enough. I think you have to still have a component of exercise. So without creating that increased movement, whether passively or actively through a person who's actually exercising them, you're still limited in how much weight you're going to lose. So how can we, I like that. I like that idea. Even in a traditional yard, you can still work together with your paddock partners and create a track. I love that.
The other thing to think about is goals that we have. So we might have a goal that we want the horse to actually do some balance pad work. And obviously we don't want to leave a mattress in the stable overnight, because it's going to be not a mattress anymore in the morning. But if we were to, while we are mucking out and checking on our horse in the evening, if we were to put the mattress in just in front of their favourite place to eat, then we're going to create a situation in which they're reaching to eat. So they're naturally moving, naturally balancing. And we don't have to be, as the owner, we don't have to be doing it. The horse is doing it for us. And then we take the horse out, take the mattress out, put the horse back in, and have our feeders at different heights. Our feeders behind barriers or much closer. Our feeders with, I have one lady that has like, it's almost like flip-top bins. So Pony actually has to work to get at the feed. And he's learned it as a trick. It's really cute. She was saying there's a slight downside to this, because he now can also do it in the feed room. But it was something to keep him amused, because he had to be away from the others a lot more. So just being as creative as possible to give them something for the brain And I honestly feel, I look at my horses, and at the moment, before they came to Sweden, they were thin, actually, living in Wales, um, and working every day on the rehabilitation yard with children. Now they're fat. I have to say it, I'm deeply ashamed, but they are fat. And so some of that is because they don't do enough, but some of that is also because they've got nothing to keep their brains occupied. So we've started also putting, I have a round corral, and at night time they come in the round corral for a bit with not very much food, but we do have a huge bouncing ball, and we play with that, and everybody joins in. And they whirl around, and it can get a little hair raising, but they really enjoy it. They're a group that I know really well, and I can control to a good point from either outside or inside. And then I can put other things, other obstacles in. Um, as I say, unlevel ground. So deliberately create unlevel grounds. That you can do on the way into a stable by just get a box, really sturdy box made up, and fill it with small river stones. So they get a bit of angling as they go into the stable. There's so many different ways that we can just manipulate, just tweak the environment, even in a small space like a stable or a stall. Where I have the biggest problem is here in the riding school. The horses are all, a lot of the horses are in these very narrow stalls. I don't actually know what they're called in English. I've never had one in Britain, but it means that although they can lie down and get up, that's about it. They can't really do very much more. With them, it's about creating that environment when they're outside in the paddock. And that's more of a challenge. It's a big riding school with more than 50 horses. So,
Wow.
but we're working on it because it will make a difference.
So I really like that idea of having like a foam pad or something in the stable. And I've thought about that a lot as well. And again, you can kind of have some variations to meet a specific horse's needs. So for example, if you want to unload the hooves or you want to change the hoof angle, you can put an angled pad in the stable, and the horse can choose when they want to stand on that or not. But I know of a foam manufacturer in South Africa who could probably make up, quite a large pad for me that's pretty sturdy. And potentially if you you glued that to a wooden board at the bottom, it would be heavy enough that it wouldn't shift around in the stable, so it could be safe. I haven't tried this, but it's one of the things I've been playing with and thinking about. And you could have, either the area in front of the door, which is usually free of bedding, or in front of food or in front of water, whatever. You could have that set up in that spot. And the horse would be free to stand on it or not stand on it. And you could add that angulation in if you wanted to, and the horse would be free to stand on it or not stand on it. And in that way, they could heal themselves, right? You could help them unload those tissues that are taking strain. So I really like that idea. And I love the idea of saying, well, when you come out of the stable, can you walk over a bit of gravel? Can you walk over a section of loose sand? Can we walk over a section of poles? And that's definitely doable, because I think in most places, there's kind of a pathway that gets traveled from the stables to the paddocks. And you can do that. You can incorporate that into that pathway, and all the horses could benefit from that. So I really like that idea. Even if it is just twice a day in and out, they're walking over different surfaces. I think that already has so much value.
Yeah.
To those that are joining us live, it's really great to have you. We're chatting about external therapeutic environments and how we can use different aspects to benefit our patients. So if you want to join in the conversation, please do. We'd love to hear from you. Share your experiences, your thoughts. Have you been playing with adding elements to your patients' environments that can help and support them? Ailsa, let's talk a little bit about kind of enrichment activities, because I think there are a lot of owners, I know quite a few owners who like to spend that time creating something enriching for their horses. And you've mentioned, a tire with some pine cones in it, and then carrots as a sort of a snuffle mat, which I love. But when you said that, I was like, oh, well, every day I'm going to have to go out and refill that and recheck it. And that's kind of labor intensive for someone who's trying to take the labor out of, managing the therapeutic aspect of their horses. But there are many owners who love that, exactly that aspect of it. So what are the other things that we could do or suggest to them to bring into the environment, or into their horse's stable or paddock, as that kind of mental stimulation?
I think one of the things is to look at what herbs and flowers you have naturally growing where you are. We have a lot of nettles here, and I grow them especially. We have mint, we have willow, white willow. So those are all things that might be quite nice if you're not feeling so good. We also have cleavers, the little sticky plants that grow the lymph. So find out, especially if you've got somebody in the area that's really good with herbal stuff, and find out what might be interesting to the horse and just leave it around. They don't have to eat it, but they might be interested. And if they're stuck on box rest, they can really begin to recreate the outside environment that they're missing. And we can be really careful about what we put in. So we don't put things in with high sugar. We don't put things in that are inflammatory. Another thing is to actually look at, I said about Chester, my dressage horse, and I know she doesn't mind my mentioning his name. She's rather proud of it. So, and his teddies. She's used peppermint oil on some of the teddies. And when he moved stable to stable, she used rose oil. And rose oil is supposed to be very good for trauma and quite calming. Peppermint oil is really stimulating. I've used peppermint oil with my Arab mare when she first came here because she had to hang around in a stable, and that's really not her thing. So I had a big bucket of water, and she had a normal water, and then she had another one with peppermint oil in, and she would just play with it like a kid, just putting her head in, blowing it, and playing with it. I know of people that, again, this is one where it is labor intensive because you're going to have to be with the horse. Bull pools. I know of people that have used old kids' bull pools, and again, hidden stuff in and given the horse the chance to kind of go in, especially little horses. It's actually quite a good, if you think about water treadmills and what we seek in terms of water pressure, obviously a bull pool isn't the same, but there is a little bit of pressure and there's a little bit of resistance when they move. And it's also super cute if you've got like minis and they're in a bull pool. And then we can think also about hanging stuff up that's okay for them to eat. So I go into some stables, usually with little ponies and little girls, and the little girls are dressed in pink, and the ponies have pink ribbons in their hair and 100 lickets that are really super, super sweet and lovely candy looking colours and not good. So I have started challenging small children to make cute animals out of turnips and cabbages. So can you make something that's kind of spooky or kind of cool or something for midsummer or something that looks like a flower or, you know. So again, getting a child who's involved in a pony's care involved in understanding, but having some fun with it, that it's not just serious about so she can't do anything. It's actually, oh, we can do this together. Let's carve this. Oh, do you want to eat the bits as I'm carving? Pumpkin, you can use all sorts of stuff. All right, they shouldn't eat the outside of the pumpkin, but they can be eating the inside, and then the pumpkin can sit outside the stable after. So it's as creative as you want to get. I have one lady who does bobbing for apples. I don't know if you do that in Africa. In Britain, we do a lot of ducking in water for apples because in Scotland it's so wet anyway. I don't think anybody notices. And so you bob your whole head in. She does that with her horse, and she has pieces of apple in the water, and it takes him ages. He doesn't drown. He just thinks it's cool, and he splashes with his foot, and the box can be a bit wet, which does mean you've got a little bit extra work. But again, it's a cool thing, and it gives him something to amuse himself while his big friends are out eating grass and he's not allowed to. So I think there's things like that. Look at your dog enrichments and then see if you can make one for a horse with what you've got around. Just tires with my bigger horse, Dio, who's an Andalusian paint cross. He will move tires around with his nose. And if I hide things sort of half under the tire, like a piece of apple, and then I just go away and leave him to it, he will spend ages pushing with his nose and really working with his neck and his front legs and his thoracic sling to get to those apples. And sometimes he'll get chased off by the other horses who are not as strong. So that's the other thing, know your herd. So I know it's going to work for him, and he's going to get moved because the other horses are going to go, wait a minute, you've got apples. Let me in there. Hold my hay. I want those apples. But then get bored because they can't get them. So then he comes back in. And in the meantime, he's probably run a fair distance because my ponies aren't so kind. Not to him anyway. So it's knowing your herd is really important. Knowing your horse is really important. If you're in a hire barn, knowing the people around, talking through why you're doing the crazy shit, because you are going to look like the most mad woman on the planet. But if you talk it through and you explain that there's a rationale behind it, and that ultimately they see that your horse is maybe getting fitter quicker than their horse, then it starts to be worth it. If you're involved with working with kids, get them involved and make it fun, because then they are going to do it, and the pony's going to have a much better time.
I love that. I've recently also seen like 2 tires on top of each other that are connected to one another, and then a pot plant put inside that. So mint, for example, and then it's covered with a hay net or something. So the horses can't devour the entire pot plant, and it can be swapped out. So you can rotate the herb that you have in there. And that's quite a nice kind of safe thing as well, that you could put inside the stable. You could put 2 or 3 of those in with different things, and that's cool. I like that idea. I'm gonna play with tires a little bit more here on my side.
I'm going to steal the pot plant idea. That's a great one. I haven't seen that before. I like that. Guys, you're going to have a pot plant tonight, because I have mint sitting here waiting to go in the garden. It can go in their garden instead.
Yeah, I really like the idea of being able to rotate it out. So you don't have, you can protect your plant as well. It's not always exposed to the, to the horses and their whims.
Yeah, and you can do what a huge mistake about a week ago. I was out at a game fair for a weekend and had no time, so I just left my pony and my Arab mare in the front garden, and I have no garden. They ate the roses. They taste real good.
No, we do that as well here. But the horses eat our trees, and we struggle to keep, we're a family who loves planting trees, and our winter is very harsh, and we lose a lot of our young trees to either the winter or the horses. So it's a challenge. Okay, so if we're gonna set up a track system, okay, now this is the ideal world. We've got the space, we've got, the environment. So we have those some ridges where it's a bit rocky naturally in the environment, and we have some slopes that they're going to have to go up or down, and we have what was the other thing? A river, a stream, and we have some undulating ground, some uneven ground. How would we set that track up to benefit kind of a normal herd? So we're not specifically looking for a therapeutic benefit from our perspective, but just a normal herd.
I think it depends how. The first thing is to think of the size of your track, and that depends on your horses. So I have, all my horses are quite little, and they manage together pretty well, going through a 2 meters space without needing to bash each other or do anything crazy. So one thing to think of is your traversing areas are going to be narrower, and your stopping, eating, finding stuff out areas are going to be a lot wider, because you want to be able to give them the possibility to not be crashing into fences or pushed by the bigger horses or the more dominant horses. So that's the first thing, is to look at your land and get Google Earth, and then draw on the picture that you take off your computer where you want to put this stuff. Where are the natural flat bits of ground where they might want to stand and eat and chat? Where's the natural shelter? So if you've got forest, is there a natural place that they're going to go into the forest, and where they're going to want to hang out? So go walk it yourself. Walk it like a horse. I don't mean on all fours, but walk it with a horse head, and think, yeah, if I were a horse, I'd really like these trees because they have a nice cover, but I can get under here and it feels pretty safe. So look at what you've got, and then start. Those are your spots that you're going to have a wider area that will accommodate up to all your horses. Depends on what you want. If you want to move your lower members of the herd and keep them moving, you're maybe not going to have a full size stopping space. You're maybe going to have a slightly smaller one, and they're going to have to move on to the next stopping space. Then you're going to start thinking about, well, okay, I've got my natural ground and I can just let the horses out on it. And absolutely, you can do that and it will make them fitter. Absolutely, straight away, you'll get a difference. But also, if you're then thinking, right, okay, well, some of these horses are going to be jumpers. Some of these horses are going to be trotter racers, we would have here. Some of these horses are going to be long distance and some of them are going to be dressage or western. So you then start thinking about what each of those disciplines, now there are some basics that they all will benefit from. I tend to use long bits of tree laying in a W formation. So they're going to have to go longer and narrower and longer and narrower in several places around my track. I like it, and I've seen a change to my horses by doing that. Some places you might then have kind of cavaletti height. Again, depends on your horses. So if you've got, I had one group when I ran the rehab centre that I would never have put in a position where they had to step over something high because they'd have crashed through it, hurt themselves, and I'd have had vet bills. So you need to think about the horses that you have in front of you. But if you have sensible horses that generally are used to being outdoors, I did have one horse that was so unused to being on a hill that he used to fall off the hill on a just about a weekly basis for the first 3 months of his life with me. I lived on a Welsh mountain like this. He would go up the mountain straight forward and then turn sideways and had no idea how to stand on level. And I'd get a phone call from my neighbour while I was at work. Your horse has fallen off your field again. I'd have to come home and help him up and show him it was all right, until eventually he got the idea. So some horses don't have the proprioception that they need for even the most basic job. So you're going to need to know your horses, and then you can set this up. If you're setting it up because you have a hire barn and you want to have lots of different horses coming through, what you need is things you can put in and take away easily. So if you're going to have big bits of tree, you probably don't want huge, great big bits of tree. You probably want more like the poles that we would jump. If you're going to have horses that are rehabilitating into barefoot, you're going to want areas of Riverstone where they can get the flexion that they need to build their foot without having to go at speed. So you also want to put things in those areas that will make them slow down. Food makes horses slow down, hinders. Things that are in their way make horses slow down. So that's the way to think about it. So it depends on your aims. If, like me, you have a bunch of fatties that are getting on a bit, and you just want to kind of make them feel comfy and not too fat, and then you're probably going to put a whole load of challenges in for them and a much more narrow track with a lot more stopping places in the beginning. And then you want to be able to close those stopping places off. So you can do like square stopping places and then eventually close them off. So they've got to keep moving. Your track doesn't have to be just go round. It can allow you to change things with gates. And that's the brilliant thing about electric fencing, I think. We can kind of start to draw our little magic on our fields, and we know we can do it because we have electric fencing. It's brilliant.
I love that. I love thinking that, there's it's not set in stone. You can change it and adjust it according to the progress of your herd, right? And how you grow and develop together. And as your creativity develops in this particular aspect. So some of the things that I've been thinking about adding to my track system, my dream track system, would be like a zigzag area. So that they would have to follow the path, they would need to go around a serpentine, essentially. And I could possibly progress that by adding poles on the edges so that they're going to be looping around over poles, over cavalettis where the flat or raised. I've also been thinking of like a rock garden in terms of big rocks, because we have quite a lot of big rocks. So not that they're going to be standing on, but they need to navigate through it again. So they're not just traveling in a straight line. They need to think about where they're stepping and how they're traveling.
It's interesting. I find that your horses actually do just go straight over. I have an area naturally on the farm that is rocks and forest, and I've put the fencing so they have to go in and out, and there's huge, enormous rocks. And there's two of them that definitely climb. I've seen them climbing like mountain goats. They climb over them. So, that's not a bad thing. The first time I was a bit hard in the mouth, but they're fine. They know what they're doing, and they live on this terrain all the time. So, yeah.
That's so interesting.
The other thing is to have a swing bridge. So I would quite like to have one, but I would really like to have the option for horses to go over a swing bridge sometimes. So I'd like to be able to stop when I'm not there. But if I'm there, I'd love to be able to ride over it, for example, or take them over it. So a track can be multi-purpose. We can use a track for training horses in hand as well, or ridden. We don't have to just make this is where you live. If we're doing that, we need to make it really clear to the horse that this is a difference. I think it's really unfair, for example, where horses are trained where they also live, because when do they get their downtime? When they come into an arena and that's where they live, when do they get their time to just switch off? Because they don't know, am I in for working or am I in just to be? So for me, it's quite important that if we do that we think that, right, this is one that I'm not going to have open to them generally, but I am going to have open when I need it.
Okay, I really like that idea. Love that idea. And the other thing would be steps. So I have some undulating ground, and I thought I could just, add to that by creating actual steps up and down. And again, that would kind of be my wider area where they could spend time and rest, which is next to the river, because the river runs parallel to the fence. So it would need to be like a parallel part of the track line instead of them crossing it at one point or the other. So steps in that area and some resting points in that area, I think would be good, and some hedges. So I'd love to actually plant full-on herb hedges in places, because I really like the idea of that, and also, yeah, allowing them to browse from one side and to also browse on a variety of vegetation, not just the kind of normal whatever is growing in the pasture.
Oh, yeah, it sounds great. I think it's just so much fun that we can do this with our horses.
Yeah, just get creative, think outside the box. I love it. Guys, to those that have joined us live today, it's been really great having you. We would love to learn about you, chat to us, connect with us, let us know where you are and what your interest is in this topic. Are you using it already in some aspect, or are you thinking about it? Is it something that has been kind of turning around in your mind for some time now, and you now have the inspiration to bring it into your practice and start chatting to clients about some things that they can do? I'd really love to hear that. If you're watching as a recording, thank you for joining us as well. Please connect with us, chat to us. Any questions that you guys have, we are here and we will connect with you over the coming days. Ailsa, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and I really hope you feel better.
I will, I'm sure, but thank you. Thanks so much. It's so awesome to talk horses.
Bye, guys.